Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you actually happened, and it was the greatest event in TV history. This man here is the host of a TV show on the Indian TV network. This man here, Surinder Sharma, is a tantric who claims to have magical powers, and this man here, the hero of our story, is Sanal Edamaruku. Yeah, Sanal Edamaruku, the hero of this tale, and somebody many people call the Indian James Randi, due to his long list of achievements of debunking frauds who claim that they've got magical and special powers. But due to the long list of wild adventures this man's been on in his lifetime, I like to think of him as an Indian version of Indiana Jones, a sort of indie if you will. Anyway, on this particular adventure, our old friend Surinder Sharma claimed that he could use his tantric powers to kill any man from a distance without touching them inside 3 minutes. And Sanal Edamaruku said, well, as long as I'm here in the studio, why don't you try and finish me off? Sorry about that, I am 42 now, and as they say, with great age comes great immaturity or something like that. But the challenge had now been laid down, and instead of the TV host saying something like, maybe we shouldn't do this, it's a bad idea, live broadcasting attempted homicide is usually frowned upon these days, what actually happened was, the Indian TV network said, let's roll with this, let's cancel all the programmes after this programme and see how long it takes for this to reach a climax. I know, and I'm not even going to apologise for that one. So, Surinder Sharma had set himself a target of 3 minutes to see if he could bring this whole affair to a happy ending, while a live TV audience watched on, hoping that things didn't get too sticky. So the no touching rule seems to have gone out the window pretty much straight away, but that doesn't bother Sanal Edamaruku, who, instead of showing signs of ill health or distress, seems to be genuinely enjoying himself. This brings some frustration to Surinder Sharma, who decides to pull out his deadly next weapon, the pull my finger card. But even after all that, Sanal Edamaruku seems to be stood there, truly enjoying himself. And Surinder Sharma, much like a flat earther that's just received the results of a physics test, must have been stood there wondering, how did it all go so wrong? So in what I can only describe as an inspired change of tactics, Surinder Sharma decides to bore Sanal Edamaruku and the live TV audience to death by making Sanal stand there for what seems like an eternity, while he paints him with water. Out of frustration, Surinder then resorts to what I can only describe as being a knob and using dirty tactics. Remember, Surinder shouldn't have been laying hands on Sanal at all, but now he's at the point where he's deliberately squeezing the temples of Sanal and poking him in the eye. But Sanal isn't having any of this, and he points out to Surinder that maybe there's something wrong with his watch, because his 3 minutes did start at 26 minutes past 5, and it's now gone 11. At this point, Surinder is desperately close to surrendering to defeat. Yeah. But he gives it one last desperate attempt and drags everybody outside, and at this point, I don't know if he's still trying to kill Sanal or whether he's trying to keep him warm at some sort of family barbecue. Now, needless to say, after this TV event, Sanal Edamaruku was absolutely fine, and you'd think he'd become some sort of hero in India for debunking live on television, some peddler of woo. But that just didn't happen, and little did Sanal Edamaruku know that it wouldn't be too long before his life was put on the line for real. Dun, dun, dun. But before we get to that point, ladies and gentlemen, this is a community channel, and I do like to get you, the subscribers, involved. So with that in mind, every now and then I will read out a letter that you send to the channel on one of my videos so we can all see what's on your mind. Today's bit of fan mail comes from a certain Andrew Caravan, and I'd really appreciate it if you were able to take the words he was saying and put them in the order that he probably originally intended so that they make sense for me in my comment section. Here we go.
Conspiracy Catz. Yeah. All you are is a bloke that just constantly dribbles out a constant stream off supper imposed first-class educational school system programming for the masses. Space full stop. And for one, im glad you are here. Sounds right, doesn't look right. Anyway, you are here to show that the programming is working. Space comma at its finest. Space full stop. Can't hide from that. No punctuation.
Well, thank you so much for that, Andrew. I really, really appreciate your contribution to the channel. All fan mail is absolutely well received. Can I please just request that next time you send me a message, rather than just thinking about the words you might use, if you also think about the order you might use them in and present them to me in that order, that might save me a little bit of time, but top marks for effort. Thank you, mate. Anyway, back to Sanal Edamaruku and the unfortunate series of events that really genuinely did put his life at risk. And it all started like some sort of movie. The date was January the 26th of August in a place called Mumbai, India. The day started like it would in any town called Mumbai in India. The lap dancing clubs emptied and the churches started to fill as churchgoers paid their respects to the crucifix statue on their way to worship. But on this day, the lives of the people of Mumbai would change as this statue started to cry from its feet. The Catholic Church denied this as a miracle, but the people of Mumbai knew better. They drank the water from the statue. They gathered there in their hundreds to receive its healing powers. But in the face of the denial of the Catholic Church that this was a true miracle, the church that owned the crucifix statue became desperate. So in an attempt to gain worldwide credibility for this miracle, the church reached out to a local Indian TV station to bring with them the one man whose voice would be heard by doubters across the globe. Coming to you soon, 10 years ago, in a town in India called Mumbai. Don't miss Indie Case of the Weeping Crucifix. Oh yes, Sanal and an engineer friend of his were invited by TV9 of Mumbai to come and examine the statue. The church that owned the statue were very confident that there was no way Sanal could possibly find a natural explanation for this phenomenon, and that would add validation, much needed validation to their claim that this was a miracle. But it didn't pan out that way. Yeah, it didn't take long for Sanal Edamaruku and his engineer friend to discover that a combination of a backed up toilet, some porous stone and capillary action meant that the water coming from the bottom of the statue wasn't holy water, but it was in fact sewage. Now, it's not unusual for conspiracy theorists and science deniers to have very strange dietary habits. But at least they know what they're consuming and they do it by choice. But Sanal Edamaruku just couldn't look on at these people drinking raw sewage, thinking that they were actually consuming holy water. So how was Sanal Edamaruku thanked for preventing people from drinking raw sewage? Well, he was thanked in quite a bizarre way by a number of Catholic groups who actually filed blasphemy charges against him under the notorious Section 295A of India's colonial-era penal code. Section 295A is an anti-hate speech law, and many of these Catholic groups felt that Sanal Edamaruku, by debunking this as a miracle, was somehow implying that the church itself was part of some sort of fraud. Now, the most frightening thing about Section 295A is that it would have given police the power to arrest Sanal Edamaruku and hold him for months, if not years, despite there being no investigation whatsoever. Now, in the aftermath of this weeping crucifix debacle, Sanal Edamaruku was receiving phone calls from policemen telling him that they were coming for him and they were going to arrest him. On top of that, he received death threats, he received hate mail, he had mobs lined up outside his house, and he received confirmation that an inmate in prison had actually been paid to give him a very, very serious beating once he was finally arrested. Sanal Edamaruku's safety and perhaps even his life was now genuinely on the line, and all because he committed the crime of stopping the good men, women and children of Mumbai from drinking shit. Luckily, he managed to flee the country and escape to Finland, where he is still there to this day, never expecting to ever be allowed to go home again. Ladies and gentlemen, this story wouldn't be complete without a quick nod to the origin story of our hero. Sanal Edamaruku, at just the age of 15, had to witness a friend and neighbour die because his family refused him medical treatment because they preferred faith healing techniques instead. It was at this point in his life that he decided he was going to dedicate his time to promoting scientific skepticism and critiquing supernatural claims. And he did a great job working his way up to actually become president of the Indian Rationalist Association. But if there's one moral we can take out of the story of Sanal Edamaruku's life, it is that yes, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't stop that horse being a fucking moron. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you very much. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. For all my members and patrons, can I just tell you how much I love you? And if I had a weeping statue, I would give it you, and I would make sure that the water that was coming from it wasn't all sewage. Meow.